I think you are definitely right that there's a good chance we could. We've already discussed it a little bit, but here we go. Spawning up the top right for Matcherino. It is Future.
And over here in the top left-hand side of the map, we have the blue Terran player from R8 Esports. He is Kelazhur. And I will say, I know that you were talking a lot about like, oh, you know, Future, very possible he'll just go for like a 2 racks or something. I think that's definitely something in Future's wheelhouse, or even Kelazhur's. I think when I see Future's TVTs a lot of the time, I do think it is a lot of committed 2-base attacks. Like, I think he is a type of Terran player who, even though a lot of them have fallen a little bit more to the wayside, Future is the kind of player that will say, yes, I'm going to hit you with the Raven, like interference matrix, timing and everything. I'm going to make a lot happen. And I'm not actually going to have the follow-up behind it that normally people will have. And I'll have just a little bit more. And my incredible intuition about the angles that I'm attacking in from and these little micro moves and stuff, that's what's going to give me the edge to win. And sometimes he looks incredible with it. It looks like magic. And sometimes it looks a little silly.
Yeah, it's... And that can be the difference in StarCraft 2, especially if you play an aggressive style. You can have one game where you look like an absolute genius, one of the best players to ever touch the game, and something can be ever so slightly different in the next game. And we're talking like 2 Marines in a slightly different location, and the same attack that would have worked utterly falls on its face, and you look like you just look like an absolute nubbin. And that is kind of how this game can work sometimes. But when you pull off those perfect maneuvers, God, it just feels better than anything, doesn't it? That's what we live for here. Speaking of which, Future does turn around with the help of the ramp and will get the jump on his opponent's Reaper. Kelazhur going to be forced to bring the SEV back into the fight and will actually have to sack it to save that Reaper. That is really nice for Future.
That is really, really well. Like, it is extremely well microed there by Future. I also want to note, we do have the reactor finishing up over here for Kelazhur, and he is going to go for that kind of a safety cycle and everything. But while I was watching that fight, I just saw the reactor being made, and I'm like, oh no.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Is he going to switch it over and make cyclones? I'm like, okay, thank God.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the danger of like going single Reaper and then losing the Reaper against a 2 Reaper opening.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
like so bad when that happens.
No, that's see, you had the reasonable like fear about the game state ending, and I was just like, oh, PTSD
oh God, we're gonna have to see more cyclones, not again.
I saw enough of them at Atlanta. I never need to see another one of those games again. Ooh, Future. Oh my God, he's gonna end up losing both these units, but he was able to keep those Reapers alive for a little bit. And that was impressive, but at the end of the day, does end up losing both of them. Scouts a little bit of information there, delays the command center for a tiny bit, but eventually things do finally stabilize.
Future did pick off 2 SCVs in the early game, and coincidentally enough, with them both going for a double gas into expand build, he's now up 2 SCVs. I wonder if there's a correlation there between killing SCVs and being ahead in workers. Not for me, because my worker production is subpar, but for good players, yes.
Yeah. Also, it's just worth mentioning that I think Future is one of the few players, I feel like it's much more rare that I see players completely skip any cyclones. And so it's always refreshing when I get to see something like that, like Future not even going for the cyclone, just not even adding one on at all.
This is a very cool build for Ghost River particularly. It is going to take advantage of the map's design, and we are going to see this little 4 Marine tank drop. This was super common for a while in TVT, but it kind of fell out of favor because there are ways to deal with it, and especially the new, well, I guess now the old Cyclone, but for a while the new Cyclone would have dealt with it pretty darn well. But now we are going to see, with this map being the map we're on, Future's just going to set up, and he's actually hitting this natural and hitting it pretty hard. Pardon me, the interference matrix is still a ways away. We're going to have to see a repair to try and keep this command center alive. And that's pretty annoying this early in the game.
No, absolutely is. It's lost resources on the repair, but also lost resources on just mining time.
Yeah.
This is exactly the kind of stuff I was talking about, where I think Future loves doing these kind of more committed 2-base pushes.
Yeah. And he loves doing these little precise micro transactions, micro interactions. Raven going to try and get jumped here. And honestly, even just the Vikings keeping this away, this feels very Gumiho-esque almost. This is a super awesome push from Future, and it started off so innocuous, but it is gaining steam and gaining momentum. Behind it, a second starport. I love what Future is doing right here. He started off with a really light, like, chokehold on the natural, and he is slowly but surely tightening his grip on this position.
Yeah. Adding on a third siege tank over here. A scan does come out. It looks like the Ravens are ready with interference matrix coming on forward. 2 of the siege tanks get disabled. A third siege tank is still alive and dealing some damage. It does finally get taken care of, though, and Future is at long last dislodged.
That was a really good timing for Kelazhur to go for that, because the Vikings were not enough in number to clean that up before the Ravens got their interference matrices off. If one less interference matrix goes off, that is a completely different situation. We do see Future still saving the Vikings. I like that he didn't land them there, because his game plan is revolving around this 2-starport play. So if you lose air control, it does get difficult. But with only 1 and now a second siege tank on the field, this is really scary. This counterattack could get a lot of work done. Yeah.
Really cool decision also from Kelazhur. I like this stylistically against Future, that he just also remade the Raven he lost.
Yeah.
He like actually just made an extra Raven after losing it, which I think is something that if you have one Raven alive, a lot of time, I feel like players won't bother with something like that. But just doing that against someone like Future, I actually love as a decision. Yeah, those Vikings are going to be looking for those kills, and if you can keep 1 or 2 of those Ravens alive at the interference matrices, then yeah, suddenly this push looks like it's a lot more formidable.
Yes, Future cannot let those Ravens get the interference matrix on, I would say, even 1, well, now 2 of his tanks, because he got 3. But if those Ravens manage to come in from an unexpected angle, Future is doing such a good job of zoning. If those Ravens get their interference matrices, it's almost definitely a canceled third base. Maybe even the game right then and there, but Future will manage to zone immaculately, being so active with these Vikings and making sure that his opponent can't get the drop on him. And now a fusion core. Oh, Future. Oh, Future. That is so fun.
Oh, I love Young Money Joe. My man is going to be throwing out some good old NA memes against Diego. Kelazhur is going to be in for a treat, I think. Going to be in for very much so a bit of a treat here.
Normally you'd say BCs in TVT. I think this might act, well, I mean, technically you'd say Range Liberators, but Fusion Core feels like BCs a lot of the time. I think it will be Range Liberators, though, and it makes sense with all the map control he's got and the relatively tight chokes you have to push into on this map. We do have 4 missile turrets. That's got to be ringing the natural, right?
BC. I think it's a BC.
I'll
tell you why. There's 1, it's the tech lab on the starport. 2, he's still not making anything, and I think he was waiting for 400 gas. Or
400 minerals, 300 gas? 300 gas, yeah.
400 minerals, yeah.
400 minerals, 300 gas, yeah.
Yes.
You are right about that, and that is going to leave him very exposed. There's the interference matrices coming on in. The Vikings were out of position, but there are a few too many siege tanks to shut down everything. Still, that's going to be a cancel on the 4th command center. That's going to be Kelazhur getting position on Future, and Future will go for the BCs, and that is wild. Range Liberators would have already been pretty crazy, but it would have been a really logical and good decision. BCs are kind of bonkers insane.
They are hilarious in TVT, actually. It's a lot of fun to watch them, especially when you get up against unupgraded Marines.
Yeah.
Like, it is pretty fun to watch, but we'll see how they're going to fare, because first 2 PCs are going to be popping out while Kelazhur is unable to really progress too much further right now. The Ravens sitting at fairly low hit points, and even a couple of those Liberators being added on the additional starports.
Yeah, and there's no additional starports for Kelazhur, so he can't match his opponent's Viking count. He started building Vikings initially, but he's only gone up to 3. He doesn't have combat shields. He doesn't have 1-1. So those Marines, they're actually just going to get kind of annihilated by the BCs, and I like the Liberator first to drive the position back. That will keep the BCs hidden, and the BCs are not going to show themselves. They're going across the map on the top side. At least one of them is. That is very intriguing. Kelazhur's identified that it's mech, but he certainly does not know that it's BCs yet.
Yeah, he is Loading up a couple of these medevacs and might be running into a missile turret wall. Yeah, the Vikings also going to be joining the BCs to help protect them. Even the Liberator adding in a little bit over here. And this is the big reveal. What is Kelazhur's reaction going to be?
I wish we had player cams because I can imagine like a big exaggerated response. I can also imagine just like a very subtle eyebrow raise, like, oh, interesting. BCs are going to teleport home. They can target down that one medevac that has a couple of units inside that they actually weren't shooting initially.
Ow.
That is kind of... No, they must have been shooting, right? They literally auto-shoot.
Yeah, like, that's very strange. Maybe we can look back at the replay on that. And one of the BCs going down is really, really painful. Those are expensive units. And, I mean, Future's trying to build up a bank of BCs. Now going to be losing a couple of these workers. He did get some counter damage done. Also killed 5 workers of his own, but... I mean, there is also a push at his front door that he has to be very, very wary of right now. Is actually Future prepared for this?
Nice mass repair on the siege tank, but it is just one tank. It gets blown away. More siege tanks on the top side going down, and Kelazhur found the position. He drew his opponent away from where he needed to be, and now Kelazhur has taken a hugely advantageous position against his opponent. There's very little anti-air actually with this army, so the BCs can actually just fight this, and they will clean up everything.
Yeah, I mean,
all right.
This is an expensive loss for Future, but it's also in a weird way going to be an expensive loss there for Kelazhur.
Kelazhur's in a weird way. He lost like 7 tanks. It's just expensive.
Yeah. But they're expensive in different ways, right? The things that Kelazhur lost were army units that were high value. The things that Future lost was his economy. So they trade, but they trade not in the same things.
Yes. And Future's setup is I mean, Kelazhur's is very replaceable for him because he's got a great economy, but Future is on 4 command centers and okay, please don't lose this. Okay, he is going to repair. I was going to say, if he loses that command center to 3 Marauders, that would have been very frustrating and very sad.
He just blew all 4 of his BCs teleport though for that.
Yeah, he did. That's a really good point. That will be annoying for a little bit, but honestly, well, okay. The main scary thing actually is that he needs to repair those BCs because at this point it is going to be, funnily enough, 1-2 Marines. The +2 attack is quite late, but there's not a lot of siege tanks for Future, and oh man, this has become such a weird game because Kelazhur's only on 1 siege tank, but Future's only on 4. Kelazhur is going into his own starport transition, which he has to, and Future is continuing to build, obviously, more air units, pumping up that Viking count once again, adding on more BCs. This is a situation where if Kelazhur had committed really hard on the ground, he might have been able to get that 4th planetary, but it would have been a really risky maneuver, and I like that he didn't try to do that.
Yeah. I think now, because Kelazhur didn't decide to get hyper aggro, we're kind of at that point now where Kelazhur likely won't just end the game with an immediate push out anytime in the near future. Future has the power that he needs to just stably hold and take in a direct one-on-one fight against whatever Kelazhur has. Kelazhur needs to play like the longer-term macro game now.
Yeah, and he's already set up for it. He already added on a few more starports before. So going up to 3. Now he's adding on 3 more additionally and getting in towards the upgrades. I do want to point out that Future, considering what has happened in this game, it makes a lot of sense, but he just now started his air upgrades for the BCs, which means that it is 2-2 bio versus 0-0 BCs, and BCs are units that are affected by upgrades. More than anything, we see that one BC getting shredded very quickly, and Kelazhur, oh my god, he kills another one and another one. This
is big.
Oh, it's disastrous. That's 3 of the 7 BCs just going down right there.
That was almost 50% of the battle cruisers that just got taken care of. 2 more battle cruisers are about to pop, so it wasn't quite 50% of them, but that is absolutely brutal. The whole point of this for Future is building up to a critical mass.
Yeah, and that is real bad form. Ooh, Scan is going to miss the Vikings, and these BCs, I think he's going to lose at least 1. Marines are going to get in on top of that. Okay, teleport was instantaneous, so he gets out of there. Good job. Very, very good job. But you mentioned it before. Now the BC's teleport is on cooldown. And yes, there are 8 siege tanks on the map. This is getting really scary. Kelazhur is adding on the right units to deal with his opponent's army. He's getting Ravens. He's already got that interference matrix. And he's added the +2 ship weapons, +1 armor is going to complete very shortly. Kind of a desperation Hellion run by. Doesn't even have blue flame. And he actually canceled. He was building it and he canceled it when he saw the Hellions go down. Kelazhur has such a strong timing to just knock out this 4th base.
I wholeheartedly agree. There is one thing I'm going to say, which is if Future can find a way to survive this attack, if he can survive, if he can hold out and trade even like okay, there is a really weird feature about this map. It is one of the maps that only has 6 bases for each player.
Yeah.
And if you're the slow meching Terran player that's just, you know, basically slowly expanding, Kelazhur is taking the entire map, and he's not necessarily always going to be trading out efficiently as long as he's trading out in general, like okay-ish, because he has enough bases to compensate for it. But long-term, Future's just going to have more stuff to mine, I think.
Potentially, yeah. Kelazhur is in a spot where he could try and actually take that kind of, I guess, I don't even know how to describe it, the like pocket 5th-ish base, the one that Future's trying to land right now.
Yeah,
Kelazhur is going to stim forward and will try and get in here. Huge anti-armor missile. That was a lot of Dorito dust on those units. And, oh, I love this from Kelazhur going after the Vikings with the Marines. Just getting any opportunity he can, taking advantage of the immobility of his opponent's army. And yes, these BCs will clean up these Marines, but even a snipe. Oh my God, he gets BC. Very well done.
I mean, Dorito Dustman +3 weapons. I mean, it basically was the equivalent of a +4 weapon versus like +0/0 battlecruisers, right?
Yeah, base. Yeah, it was like 4-2 upgrades versus 0/0 equivalently.
Yeah.
When you like subtract everything down and you just cancel out. The math gets a little bit complicated, but that sounds right.
I'm so glad I got you to do that math on stream, Steadfast.
Oh, I will always do math on stream. You know that. You know I will never hesitate to do math on stream. Even if I turn out to be grossly, drastically wrong, I will YOLO in there like nobody's business.
That's one of my favorite things about you. You're so easy to bait with that.
You're like, haha, I baited you in. And then I'm like, no, I'll run through another wall just to prove you didn't. And then it's like, well, that was the real bait, actually, is you got me on the indignity.
Yeah. You know, I'm actually surprised. I didn't even realize this, but I saw Kelazhur had added on some of the Thors and things like that. And I feel like that's not an uncommon thing to do, just to add in a few Thors. We have almost 7, 8 Thors going to be out here for Future in a moment. Like, that's kind of crazy. That's a lot of Thors.
Yeah, but they don't have any attack upgrades, so they're not as good as they should be. And like they do benefit a lot from the high impact payload. Now, Kelazhur also doesn't have that, but that's not like a core part of his army. It's just kind of an auxiliary part. Thors are gonna blast each other in the middle. It ends up being a 1-for-2, but Kelazhur was able to get some other stuff done. We do see the missile turrets trying to defend against these BCs, but oh, okay, Kelazhur thought that, I think he thought all of the BCs teleported home, but obviously they teleport home afterwards.
But that was really nice because Future was actually, he had this bottom left-hand base under fire.
Yeah.
Like a few units were attacking there, but he pulled the entire army back with that battlecruiser move. So he gave himself space, he allowed himself to resituate. He's now reestablishing some of these missile turrets, which he's very much so going to need because his entire army just got Dorito dusted again.
Also, Kelazhur's army is 0 ground units. There are 36 Vikings, there are 18 Ravens. He's building nothing but air units right now. These Thors are actually a big problem. Now, with 18 Ravens, you can turn off just about every single Thor 3 times over. But Thors are not the only thing in the army. This is actually suddenly very scary for Kelazhur because he doesn't have anything to deal with the Thors.
Yeah,
well, not anything, but it's complicated. We are going to see a huge concave coming in. The interference matrices, well, there is a lot of them. Is there enough Raven energy to clean this up? The Thors are kind of uncontested on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, the Thors are going to go uncontested for a little bit, but plus damage versus mechanical, Vikings are actually going to be able to shred through those, and Kelazhur looks like he is going to be able to clean up almost everything over here.
Holy crap.
I know that of course, those Thors are going to get interference matrix, but I'm actually a little bit surprised that Future left them in high impact payload mode. When you have that many, I understand when you have like 3 Thors, high impact payload makes a lot of sense. When you have like 8 Thors or 9 Thors or something along those lines, doing the splash damage mode against that many Ravens or Vikings, I actually feel like he could start one-shotting them before the interference matrices even came out.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. That is a lot of mules.
That was honestly one of the weirdest fights you will see, because the Thors didn't have any attack upgrades, like I said before.
Yeah.
The upgrades were so much better for Kelazhur, especially when you take into account the Dorito Dust. Before it, there was only a 1 upgrade advantage. But Kelazhur also didn't have smart servos, but it didn't matter because he had such an overwhelming number of Vikings. And you mentioned the plus versus mechanical. That was so good for him there. Kelazhur is going to try and take this base on the right side. We are now approaching a point, you mentioned, it could come down to who mines out this, like we could come out down to a fully mined out scenario. And Kelazhur is ahead in terms of gas lost, which is actually, I mean, he's ahead in both factors, but I think the gas is going to be the big difference maker in this one. Yeah, this is such a crazy
Kelazhur's
game.
definitely been trading more effectively with that last couple, like, trade or two. So I think that he still is in the favorable position. But yeah, it is just going to be interesting to see. Like, Kelazhur, in a weird way, he's, like, trading more effectively. But there's also still, like, a timer for him because he's not actually, like, mining, or he's not going to have that much more mining in, like, a little bit.
Yeah, and he's building a lot of static defenses in the middle of the map that won't help him too much. I like this little split off here from Kelazhur, only sending 4 Vikings. Didn't get himself into trouble by, you know, over-committing to defending that BC. Easy, obviously it's very simple to, you know, say that, but it's easier said than done to send the wrong number. Oh my god, these Liberators just blasting that Thor, and they are going to just obliterate those 2 Thors. Jeez. +3 ship weapons does not mess around.
Advanced ballistic liberators, man, they truly do not want to be messed with. Is that a okay? That's a planetary fortress.
He's
nice.
morphing. Look at the upgrades tab, by the way. Oh, hold that thought. We are going to see a fight coming in. Anti-armor missile on both sides. I think there's more Vikings for Future.
This is great for Future.
Yeah, it's so good for him.
What? I'm so confused why Kelazhur took that fight. That's can't be in most of his army, right? He has a bunch of bio in the bottom right. He loses so much of his Viking control over there. I know that, yes, he cleaned up a lot of Thors and everything, and he did clean up the bottom right-hand base, but Kelazhur, I'm really worried about him now.
Yeah, he just lost so many Vikings. He is trying to go back into Vikings. He does have a lot of production. 9 starports, in fact. But we are going to see this base on the left side. This is going to be the weirdest little base trade. Ooh, the mass repair coming on in. Is it going to be enough? No, just barely enough DPS with the 3-3 bio. And imagine building armor. If he has building armor right there, that planetary survives.
This is actually hilarious. And now we have the Mule Hammer being dropped down the bottom right. I feel like a battle cruiser could teleport onto that bio army and kill the rest of it because there's so few Marines, there's no medevacs, and the Vikings are chasing after a lot of Kelazhur's reinforcements, but they're now getting chased back with a bioforce there, and that is going to be a little bit too much. Kelazhur does manage to take that game in the end, but what a weird finish.
Yeah. Weird really doesn't do it justice. Because, like, first we had that push that was like 7 Thors against no ground army and like 1 Liberator. And it got stomped into the ground, stomped into oblivion. And from that point on, Kelazhur had very strong control of the game. And then suddenly, while like making maneuvers to win in the long term, he got caught with a really like outclassed Viking count army. And then it just turns into this weird base trade where both players lose a lot, but Kelazhur still is on his 6 bases, and Future gets knocked back down to 4. Even as he knocks his opponent down to 5, like, Kelazhur was just mining so much more for so much longer. And ultimately, it was really just the bank of Kelazhur that won him that game at the end.
Yeah.
But, like, what a weird way for that to finish.
It almost makes me wonder, like, That game was so chaotic. I'd have to go back and look again to see if this is even a viable option for future, given that he had just lost his bottom right-hand base and everything. Could he have stabilized if he had pulled back with his Vikings earlier? Because he lost so... I think like the ultimate thing that made him tap out in the end, even though I think he had taken some bad losses and he was behind at that point, but losing all the Vikings as he was retreating back and everything was really, really bad.
Yeah, that
I
hurt.
wonder if he could have stabilized if he had just pulled back a little bit earlier.
That is a really good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he could have, but yeah.
He might have been able to. The thing is, I think he would have needed to recognize what Kelazhur was switching back into, because if it's more Vikings, you have to maintain air control, because if you don't, Kelazhur is just going to run it over that way. But if it's a hard switch into bio, which was also possible for Kelazhur, how do you deal with that if you don't make siege tanks? And even if you make siege tanks, they're +0 siege tanks. Like they're not the world beaters that you kind of need. I don't know. Things got real weird there for sure, but ultimately we are going into game number 2. Once again, a very long game, and we're starting up in the top left for Matcherino. It's Future.
And in the bottom right, we have the blue Terran player. He is Kelazhur, setting up 1-0 and playing it for R8 Esports. Dave, I want to remind you that game started off with Future doing a pretty sick 2-base, like, semi-committed push that was really looking to get a lot of damage done. Like, that game started in a very, very different place.
It did, and it was such a strong push, too, out of Future. Like, it looked really scary for Kelazhur to deal with, and he managed it brilliantly. And the cleanup definitely put him into a good position. Yeah, really funky game. Like, that is a good point. Like, Future was, I think, pretty decently behind off the early game. Not crazy unplayable behind, but when you set up for a 2-base push, you go for that double starport play, and it doesn't really pan out. It is very tough to come back in a game like that. So the fact that he made it as complicated as he did is, well, it's quite nice for him. Oh, Future. Okay, he was going for, it looked like he was going to go for a 2-Rax Reaper, but no, this is a 3rd barracks being produced. Maybe he has identified that Kelazhur does not scout with an SCV in this matchup, or maybe he's thinking that he won't and is going to just try and end the game with an aggressive play off of 1 base. Obviously, you can't expand behind this, but you are looking to do a ton of damage as Future.
Yeah, I also want to make a mention that in the last game, this is the very beginning of the last game, Kelazhur moved across the map with a Reaper and an SCV. Future just had a Reaper. He won the fight, literally being down a unit. I actually think that gives me a lot of confidence in Future's ability to micro after something like that in the beginning. And maybe Future's also thinking, like, I might be able to just out-micro him a little bit in this early game.
Yeah, that's definitely a very real possibility. We are seeing a quick Cyclone coming out from Kelazhur, and that is going to be good defensively, but it's not going to be amazing defensively. Ooh, Kelazhur is going to move forward with these 2 Reapers. If he is not super quick on moving back, he is going to get jumped and get absolutely stomped, and that's exactly what we could see happening. Good defensive grenade makes it only 1 Reaper loss. That could have very easily been 2.
Yeah, but I mean, at least some of the Reapers have been revealed now, so he knows that there is a slightly abnormal number of these Reapers, as they are going to just be moving across the map. Oh, Future was a little bit further forward. He could have actually ambushed one of those Reapers, but I guess the Cyclone was also there to help kind of protect things for a little bit. 5 Reapers now. We'll see what Future can get done with this.
I think Kelazhur might still think this is a 2-Rax Reaper. He didn't see the timing of the command center, and he only saw 3 Reapers. Now, way more Reapers are going to show up maybe than he is expecting. Grenade. Oh, actually knocking the Cyclone to safety. Oh, that did not go as Future drew it up at all. Did he just lost 4 Reapers and killed nothing.
That was unfortunate. That was really, really unfortunate there for Future. And he does finally kill a Reaper, it looks like, there, but that is not the way that Future wanted that to go. That's a heavy investment. You're going for 3 barracks as an opening in a matchup where you really are so focused in the early game around those Ravens, around the siege tanks. I mean, he is still going to have his own kind of advantages in the form of a very fast stim upgrade and having the additional barracks production. So he's going to have a lot of Marines, but man, Steadfast, this is not going to be the normal comfort zone for a Terran player.
No, and of course, it is important to note here that Kelazhur had a normally timed command center. So he was just producing SCVs for a lot longer. The orbital command just now finished for Future, which means he's just now able to produce SCVs 2 at a time. The starport, I had to do a double take in my head, even though I know this was a 3 racks Reaper opening, and I know for a fact that his starport is that delayed. The timing made me think, oh, he's throwing down a second starport right now. Like, that is how late this starport is, and interference matrix is going to be done. There is only 1 Raven on the field at the moment. The second one just popped out, but this looks so scary right now. Unless Future can get an instant jump on this army, stim, and kill it. Actually, hang on. There's only one.
I'm a little
siege tank.
worried about Kelazhur, actually, like, for exactly that reason. This number of Marines, stim is finished up.
Oh my god.
Like,
oh.
Okay, he's gonna stim forward. He's gonna deal with the Cyclone. He's gonna deal with the siege tank, and he loses 2 workers.
That siege tank killed a lot of Marines, though. That was 10 Marine kills. Still, it does get cleaned up, but that was an expensive cleanup. On the other side of the map, we are going to see... nice job with the Reapers. Actually going to be able to find a little bit of value. Middle of the map. These Marines do not have combat shields, so they are getting... Each stim actually does hurt them a lot.
Yeah. I mean, these are like up-a-tree Marines. They're just going to constantly be in the red. 2 medevacs are finally popped out now, though, so he's at least going to get some bits of healing. He's actually going to unload and maybe try and circumvent around and get on top of the siege tank, ignoring the Marines, ignoring the Cyclone. Is this going to work? SCV's being pulled off the line as well. A couple of workers are going down. A lot of workers are going to be going down. And it's kind of a weird trade. Future trades out his economy in order to get an even more drastic cleanup there on the army of Kelazhur. And Kelazhur, he lost his army now twice. Is that going to be enough for Future to take advantage of? Because he now has an opportunity to do something with these Marines, but he has to do something now.
Yeah, Kelazhur is on a 3rd command center. It just finished up. It's about to turn into an orbital. Now, there is no stim for Kelazhur. That is a big problem for him. But can Future do what he needs to get done? Because this is pretty committed off 2 bases. There are 4 Ravens here. Siege tank is... Oh my god. Oh my god, it stays alive. No way. Okay, well, it's fair to say that that did not achieve what it needed to.
No, not in the slightest. That is really, really
God,
unfortunate there for Future. But
he killed literally units.
Okay, that's worst case scenario. A little bit.
Yep.
Future is in a world of trouble and pain right now, but Kelazhur, I mean, he is playing this all out well. He is reacting to these little things that Future is doing. I think things maybe got a little bit scary in some ways of just losing all of your army supply there, but in the earlier push, but this is still working out great.
Yeah, this is very patient from Kelazhur. He dropped all the auto turrets there, and that helped keep that siege tank alive from earlier. Future, the fact that he's still able to put together what seems to be or feels like a somewhat scary army is very impressive. But Kelazhur is just so far ahead in economy that if Future can't find damage very soon, like real damage, he is just going to get outproduced in such a big way. Kelazhur is also on 5 racks, whereas Future just now started his 4th and 5th. Like, the infrastructure is so much better for Kelazhur. He's going to have 1-1 upgrades soon. That will be... Oh my god, the missile turret! One more shot and that was dead.
Yeah. Nice save there from Future to at least keep that alive, as he really cannot afford to bleed out any more units over here. 3rd base, thankfully, for Future is finally finished up, turning into an orbital command. He's getting his own mining done, so he's been aggressive this whole time, and through that aggression has actually secured himself a little bit of safety, but it is still going to be a pretty significant worker deficit. It is still going to be a pretty significant deficit in a lot of ways that Future, he has tools available at his disposal to try and perform aggression, but Kelazhur is just swatting everything he's trying away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also worth noting, of course, that Kelazhur, like in the previous game, he built an extra Raven. So he is on 4 Ravens. And yes, they drained their energy out before, but because there's so many of them, they're accumulating such a significant amount of energy that it is a similar situation to the previous game in a weird way, where if those Ravens get to land their interference matrices on the defensive tanks of future, even though it's completely different army compositions, completely different situation, the game might just end. If those Vikings cannot prevent the Ravens from getting the big interference matrices, assuming Kelazhur goes for a push, if he sits back, then it's a potentially different story. But if he decides to get aggressive, those interference matrices have game-ending potential.
No, absolutely. As the game goes on, they're only going to become a bit scarier, or like scarier and scarier, I think, for future in a lot of ways, just because he is going to not be able to find as much value from just his pure kind of marine heavy composition, which frankly is not even that heavy anymore. He's lost so many of them. He's actually, outclassing the marine count right now by like 20 Marines.
Yeah, by a lot. This Marine, by the way, speaking of Marines, was able to find the sensor tower that's trying to be constructed and picks off 2 SCVs. Talk about insult to injury. Kelazhur, if he actually stims forward with these units, I don't think there's a whole lot to defend that 4th base just yet for future. Kelazhur looks... Wait, does he have 2 groups of Marine medevac? Yeah, it looks like he does.
Yeah.
He is, of course, way ahead in the upgrade timings, but for now it is 1-1 versus 1-1. It's a shame that Kelazhur didn't scan this base. We see the siege tanks now setting up for future, but there was a big opportunity there for Kelazhur to... I don't think he could have killed the 4th, but it honestly might have been a lot closer than it should have. And maybe he would have even gotten it. At the very least, he would have prevented Future from setting up on that position. Regardless, Kelazhur's 2-2-1 timing is going to be so strong right now.
Yeah, this is going to be the big scary thing. He's nearly maxed out at this point. He's ready to go. Interference matrix on one of the forward siege tanks. The other siege tanks are quite far back. There's only a couple of Vikings here. Really not enough to deal with the Ravens. The stim forward, the lift up on the command center. Kelazhur is reigning supreme with a 2-0 on future.